Hi friends, my name is Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. So you may or may not be aware, depending on where you live, about the flooding that's been happening in Queensland, Australia. I live in Tasmania, so we've had a lot of fires and they're still ongoing. There's about 18 fires left. If you've watched a few of my videos from about 2 weeks ago, I was talking about it for 2 or 3 days. But in Queensland, there's been some devastating floods. They've been getting huge amounts of rain, and more rain than one could expect in short periods of time, which cause major flooding. And of course, you know, it affects people, but it also affects non-human animals, and they're the ones that are in the fields that can't escape. And of course, there's 10.5 million animals, cows mostly, or more. There's probably more than that, but I think there's 10.5 million cows in Queensland. And there's been these tremendous floods, and of course, the people who are, you know, the farmers who own, in quotes, these cows, they can't really do anything to save them. And so they're just left in these fields, and so the flood waters get higher and higher, and these cows just drown. And that happens all over the world. If there's a fire, if there's a flood, if there are freezing cold or terribly hot summers, these animals are just out in those elements. And oftentimes, and this is I'm talking about farmland now, but of course there's animals that are in facilities, you know, tens of thousands of them, and if there's a fire, oftentimes they all just die in the fire. But anyway, in Queensland, about 500,000 cows have so far drowned in these floods. And because we don't see these animals as sentient beings, we just see them as resources, as property. When the farmers talk about these animals, they talk about them in terms of stock losses, you know, livestock, that terrible word that indicates that a sentient being is somehow a property, a stock. And so they talk about them in terms of financial loss, not in terms of how awful it is that 500,000 plus sentient animals were just left in fields and they drowned, one by one, all struggling to survive. And then of course, they implore the government to subsidize them once again. Now those animals, it's not the farmer's fault, because those animals wouldn't be there, they wouldn't be drowning if we were vegan, if we weren't creating demand for animal products. So any of us who are wringing our hands about 500,000 cows drowning and just being left in fields, I mean, it happens every single day of the year all over the world. But they wouldn't be there if we weren't creating demand for animal products. So it's not the farmer's fault, and it's not capitalism's fault, it's our fault, because we are not vegan and we are creating demand for dairy, eggs, flesh, honey, and so forth. So, you know, it really, really breaks my heart, but I realize that this happens every single day of the year. And those animals wouldn't be there. Those animals wouldn't be dying in fires. Those animals wouldn't be standing in paddocks where it's blaring hot sun like now in Queensland. I mean, if those animals had survived that flood, they'd now be spending time standing all day without shade in 40 degrees Celsius plus weather. You know, these animals are just sort of left out in all elements. They have no shelter. And eventually, when it's in their short life, they're just put in the back of trucks and killed. And they're the ones in the fields, the ones in these awful warehouses that they call free range or barn free or whatever. They just are in these awful windowless sheds. They get a blink of an eye of time, if they're lucky, outside, or they may not at all, and they still call them free range or barn free or whatever. You know, this stench of ammonia if they're hens, and they're sentient, and so they're in these sheds that are absolutely, their lungs are burning from the ammonia, and these are like so-called humanely raised animals. And of course, you know, the male chicks are ground up alive, and even if they aren't ground up alive, which all over the world they are, but they're trying to find ways of making it so they don't have to ground male chicks up alive, but it doesn't matter, because if they ever stop doing that altogether, which they have in Germany, of grinding up male chicks because they're no use to the egg industry, but the thing is that they're not our resources, so it doesn't matter what kind of life they have, whether it's heavenly or it's horrific, which it is pretty much for every animal, and eventually they're killed because they're not productive anymore. This is not okay, using animals as resources. It's not okay. They're sentient. And the same goes for the salmon. We have salmon farms here. Salmon farms have got tens of thousands of salmon all cramped together in these nets, and the way they decide what is humane, in quotes, for them is how many die, you know, before they decide what is the right number for those nets. And I've done a whole video on that. If you look back, I think it's called, if you just search salmon farming on this channel, you'll find it. I'll leave a link to it. So I don't talk about how animals are used, how animals are exploited very much, because, like I said, it doesn't matter if they're treated in the, you know, if they're sung to sleep at night and they have separate little beds and everybody loves them and all this kind of stuff. It's neither here nor there. And if they're stroked very gently when somebody cuts their throat, you know, it makes no difference to me, and it makes no difference to a lot of vegans. What makes a difference is that they're used at all. That they're used at all. That is the issue with vegans. With anybody who's truly an ethical vegan, that is the issue. Use, animal exploitation, full stop. That is the problem, not how they are used. So this whole humane scam, humane animal use, is just a scam to sell more animal products. They're still exploited. It's still non-consensual. Their young are taken from them. They're eventually killed when they're not productive. They're repeatedly impregnated and so forth. It's all awful. So anyway, back to these cows, these 500,000 cows plus. They don't really know how many have drowned. Each one of those cows is was just like the dogs and cats whom you live with, whom we live with, who we think are family members, who have individual personalities. They are just, every single one of those 500,000 cows, believe it or not, is just like that cat or dog or other animal that we've arbitrarily decided is more important. They're as sentient as that dog or that cat. And they loved life just like the dogs and cats whom we live with, and they did not want to die. They did not want to be seen as property. They wanted to live their life, interact with others and with the world, and they had individual personalities. And if we had ever taken the time to know even just one of them, they would have been unique compared to all those other cows. And that's the truth. Just like the little dogs and cats whom we live with, they all have unique individual personalities, unique likes and dislikes and so forth. That's the same with those cows. The same with every single chicken in those large warehouses they call free-range warehouses with tens of thousands of animals who just have enough room to spread their wings maybe, and that's about it. And if they die and rot on the floor, other animals eat them. I mean, this is the sort of insanity that we've created. And if someone from another planet came down and saw what we were doing, it's no wonder they would just turn around and go back to wherever they came from. And which leads me to this other point. So, and I just want to point out that it's not, like I said, it's not the farmers, It's not the farmer's fault that these animals drown in these fields. It's not the farmer's fault when there's repeated fires in facilities where tens of thousands of animals die and burned alive. It's not business's fault if a whole lorry, a whole ship goes down, like these awful live export ships where it's a horror house on these ships, which is something that happens. Australia sends live animals across to Saudi Arabia and wherever, and the ships can sometimes sink, and tens of thousands of animals go with them and drown, or they're absolutely cooked alive. It's so hot on these ships. This is the sort of awful, nightmarish thing we are putting sentient animals through for completely unnecessary reasons. Completely unnecessary reasons. And like I say, we don't need, and you know, you can look this up in journals, in science journals and medical journals. Look up nutritionfacts.org. They scan all the latest medical and science journals and nutrition journals, the latest, and they put it together. It is clear that we do not need animal products at all to survive. Millions of vegans can attest to that. I can attest to that. I've been vegan for 14 years now, and I'm very healthy. We don't need animal products to survive. We can easily meet all our nutrition requirements from plants and other non-animal sources. So all this terrible suffering and misery and death and violence and killing and putting slaughterhouse workers through hell, and they get PTSD because it's so horrific in slaughterhouses, and we're causing world hunger, we're causing food shortages, we're causing the oceans to be destroyed because we're fishing them out of existence. By 2048, they'll be empty. The oceans are warming up because of animal agriculture. Animal agriculture is a major factor in the climate crisis. I'm going to share these memes again. Please read them. Just pause and read them. It's a science fact that a major driver of the climate crisis is animal agriculture. And everything that means, it means more than just the greenhouse gases. It means eutrophication. It means acidification of the oceans. It means a huge amount of arable land is used to graze cows and other animals that could be used to feed the world. Check out that second meme I posted about how much land will be left when we stop animal agriculture, and how much there's a looming food crisis coming because of the climate crisis. We cannot afford any more. Putting aside now the ethical reasons why we shouldn't exploit animals and use them as things because they're sentient, we should not be ethically using animals as well because it's destroying their home and it's destroying our home. And it is getting very dire. If you've been paying attention lately, you know, this is a moral issue. It's a moral imperative that hardly anybody is talking about on the left or the right about the need to go vegan. We have to go vegan because we are destroying the planet and we are on the edge of extinction. There was a article, and I've read this before about insects, but there's an article about insects and how there is a massive drop in the amount of insects now on the planet, which means that there's a whole lot of animals that are going to starve. And if you rely on animals, which you shouldn't, but if you do, look out. I mean, I'm talking about if you rely on animals like fish, if you're eating fish, look, you know, these animals, these all eat insects too. Birds eat insects. There's a whole lot of animals who eat insects, a whole lot. Most of the birds in my state eat insects. And you know, that we're talking about a rapid sixth mass extinction. I'm going to do something just on that soon. I haven't really had time to peruse that whole article, but I get an idea what it means. And I'll leave a link to that article. It is a massive drop in insects. And that's partly, one, to climate, because insects can't adjust, but also to the crazy pesticides that have been introduced in the last 30 or more years by Monsanto, the neonicotinoids. They're killing bees, it seems. From all reports, it seems like they're killing bees. If the bees dies, it's over for us, and that's happening. When we eat honey, the beehives, the honey is replaced with syrup, and those bees are eating this sickly sweet syrup, which makes them weak, which makes the hives weak, and they die off too. You know, weak bees don't survive. So when you eat honey, when you're not vegan and you eat honey, you're contributing to the bee die-off. Now, they're domestic bees, European bees, but still, they're part of the pollination today. They're not native. So, you know, there are so many reasons to go vegan. I can't stress to you how important it is, particularly at this point, because as you can see, these Western governments, all they're interested in now is invading countries for oil. That's what they're doing in Venezuela, right? They're going the other way. They're actually going the other way. Like I said to somebody last night, I cannot believe, it's like being in a nightmare for me, and I'm sure it is for other people who know what's going on. It's like being in a nightmare that is so bad that, and you realize that it's real. This is actually happening. That you have governments that are absolutely disinterested in climate change. In fact, they're going the other way, like Donald Trump is undoing all these environmental protections, and they're going hard for oil, invading countries like Venezuela. They did that for Iraq, and they destroy those countries. I mean, they're actually, they have no interest in a Green New Deal. They have no interest in it. I mean, these people are psychopaths. They don't care. I don't know what they think. They think their little bunkers are going to protect them. I mean, they'll be in there for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. This planet is going to be so unlivable in about 30 or 40 years. And I say that seriously. It's not going to be 2100. It's going to be in the next 30 or 40 years, or even sooner, because the dramatic exponential disasters that are happening to nature are they're so extreme already that I will be surprised if in 15 years we aren't all really struggling to grow food, or we're already starving. And this is not hyperbole, this is real. If you've ever read that article on the brink of agriculture, I think it's called, I'll find it and I'll post it. That was about a year and a half ago I saw it. They're already having heaps of trouble growing food because of the climate. It's just so unpredictable. I mean, I see it here in Australia. Corn is, in areas where it just gets too hot. The plants cannot handle extreme back and forth with climate. They cannot handle it. And if it gets too hot, they just wither. You know, and that's our food source. And if you think that you're going to be able to eat animals, if they don't have plants, that's not going to happen. Animals need plants, and we're animals too. And we are on the front lines of the sixth mass extinction. The front lines. If the insects go, and they're going quick, we're gone too. You know, these are like that unfortunate species is termed the canary in the coal mine. You know, these are signs. Huge alarm bells. Huge alarm bells. And like I say, I can't believe, I've said to my partner, I just sometimes, I try not to look at these stories about the disasters that are happening to animals, to species. They're going extinct, or they can't survive in what's happened to them in their habitat, or we're taking over their habitat, or it's too hot for them, or whatever. I can't look at it because it's too upsetting. As a vegan too, it makes it so much worse. It's like hearing about children dying by, you know, the hundreds of thousands, or children, you know, suffering. It's just like that for me, right? I can't handle I can't handle even looking at nature videos anymore. It makes me too sad. I can't handle reading. I accidentally saw that thing about insects. And I know what that means with just reading the title. I can't handle it because it's just so, well, it's frightening for one, but it's also just absolutely, look what we're doing to these other species on this planet. This is their home too, and look what we're doing to them. Like I said, if somebody from another planet came down and saw what was happening here, it's no wonder they wouldn't want to make any contact with us. We are a violent and dysfunctional species. And seriously, and I say this without misanthropy, and I've said it before, I hope we never get off this planet and go to any other planets, because we do not know how to behave. We would create chaos in the universe. The only way we're ever going to get off the planet is in our mind when we watch Star Trek. That's about it, and thank goodness, because we're actually running out of resources, and this extinction thing is coming up on us fast. We don't even have time to get off this planet, and thank goodness. I'm sorry to say that, but just watching what's going on is just so insane. And it is really hard to, I don't know about you, but sometimes I think, good Lord, what is it? I mean, good heavens, what is this all for? What are we doing? You know, what are we doing? I mean, look, have you looked at sort of like a lot of the stuff that's online, like on Instagram? As much as I like Instagram, I mean, people are, it's like we're having a party while the Titanic is going down. Have you looked how crazy it is? I mean, seriously, it's like you wouldn't even know that there's this looming disaster that's coming up on us. It's like we're like a bus which is already 3/4 over the cliff, and it's only going to take somebody to move the wrong way and over it goes. That's where we are as a species on this planet. That's how dire it is. And when I say to people, you know, stop wringing your hands about climate change if you're not vegan, because if you're not vegan, you are majorly contributing to this, majorly. And you may not want to hear that, but it's true. It's a science-based fact. You may not want to hear it, but it's true. Unsubscribe if you don't like that comment. Go ahead. I'm not here to get followers. I'm not here to be popular. I'm doing this actual channel because at some point I just thought it's almost like documenting a disaster, really, is what it feels like to me. Because I just sort of see this as a runaway train. Most of the train has hit the wall, and the last quarter of the train is just about to squish concertina style into the wall. I sort of feel like it's sort of too late, really, but I don't believe in giving up. You may as well just roll over and die. I may as well walk out into the river with a pocket full of rocks, you know, if I'm not going to do anything. You know what I mean? So we have to do something. And something you can do that doesn't rely on any permission from anybody. It doesn't rely on corporations. It doesn't rely on governments to give you permission. You don't have to wait for the government to do anything, because they're not going to do anything. And what they will do will just pat you on the head and say, and trim around the edges. It's not enough. And corporations, of course, are not going to do anything, because all they're interested in is pleasing their shareholders. So they're not going to do anything. So who is it up to? Who is it up to? It's up to us, right? It's up to us. And if we stop voting also for these crazy people. I'm sorry, they're just psychopaths. They don't care about what's happening to the planet. They don't care what's happening to other species. They don't care what's happening to you or me. They think they're going to survive in their bunkers. Good luck with their security when their security thinks, what on earth are we doing? What on earth are we doing protecting you now? You know, I'm gonna have what you have. I mean, good luck with that, right? Let me tell you a quick story of something I read. Somebody was giving some talk to a bunch of wealthy people, right, about the future of the planet, and mostly all they were interested in is what they were going to do when their bodyguards and stuff turned on them in the bunkers, that kind of thing. Seriously. And in the bunker, can you imagine if they had children in this so-called bunker, which, you know, they can't possibly, it's unsustainable, right? Children, can you imagine how resentful those children are? And can you imagine having a bunch of psychopaths living in a bunker, because that's what they are? If they don't care about what's happening, and they obviously don't, they'll all be in their little bunkers together, or their big bunker. Imagine that, a bunch of psychopaths together in a bunker. Doesn't that sound like fun? Seriously. But I think they're so deluded. They're so deluded. They think their money or their power is going to save them. That we'll all be, they don't care about us, we'll all die, and they'll survive in their bunkers and come out and start some sort of God knows what. It won't be half as much fun for them if they did survive, which they won't, when everybody's gone, because half the fun of being an oligarch is to put your foot on the necks of people who are poor. Well, I'm sure they'd try and set up a system like that again. But anyway, I'm going off the track, but I know I've said this a couple of times now, but I sometimes, at this point, with everything that's going wrong between the imperialist wars for resources and just killing millions of people in the Middle East and elsewhere, and now Venezuela, and the next it'll be Iran and so forth, you know, world domination aims of the US. And then all that's happening, the sixth mass extinction in the world, you know, there is just article after article after article. I can't bear to look at it, but there is, I know there is, when I accidentally flick through something with science, and there's just articles of all the things that are going wrong for animals, and that they're dying off, and that they can't survive. And then there's reams of articles about plants and how they're not managing to adapt. It is a fucking disaster. It is a disaster of massive apocalyptic proportions, what's going on right now. I didn't want to live in a world like this. I really didn't. And I find it very hard, actually, you know, living in a world like this. I find it very hard the way we treat one another, the way rich people now have the keys and the shop, and we're just all extraneous. I have a hard time sort of watching what they're doing to people of color in other countries. This white supremacist thing. I have a lot of trouble with what we're doing to other animals, the ones that have been domesticated, bred into existence to be used as resources, but also the ones that are in what's remaining of our ravaging of their home. It's a nightmare for me. I'm a sensitive person. It's a nightmare for me. As a vegan, it's a double nightmare. Like, some people are not vegan and all they see is the awfulness that we do to humans, right? And then they sort of think about when we do stuff to nature, they see nature as something that belongs to us, and that, you know, they won't get to look at those animals anymore. It's like a sort of a kind of an entertainment thing, you know. People talk about we're stewards of the planet. No, we're fucking not. And we never were. this is not our planet. This isn't our planet. We have overpopulated this planet due to technology and medical advances and stuff like that. And we've become too smart. We're just hairless apes, hairless primates that have a technological bent and some skills, verbal skills, and we've gone, you know, we've lost the plot. And we're inherently violent, sadly. You know, I don't know if we're inherently violent, but we've managed to make that our modus operandi. I think people cannot be violent, but I think it's just too easy, and we love to dominate and we love to exploit the vulnerable. But I just sort of, this whole combination, like I see what as a vegan, I'm aware of what we're doing to other animals just as I'm aware of what we're doing to humans. It means the same to me, hearing about the 500,000 cows, who, by the way, if they had survived that, would have had to stand out in 40-degree-plus sun without any shade. And then eventually, in their short life, they would have been taken to a horror slaughterhouse and killed. You know, but it means something to me and I'm aware every single minute of the day, globally, there's thousands and thousands of animals killed, tortured and killed, all for trivial reasons of mostly palate pleasure. That's the bottom line. We don't need animal products at all to survive, and here we are causing thousands and thousands of animals every minute globally. 1 trillion plus land and aquatic animals are being tortured and killed every year for our taste buds, basically. And a plant-based diet, a balanced plant-based diet is fantastic and delicious. And it's great for our health, and it is an imperative now for the planet. It always was, but it really is. It's a moral imperative to go vegan for other animals and for the planet. I'm not doing this channel as some sort of a popularity thing. If I was, I wouldn't be talking about veganism, and I wouldn't be talking about anti-war, because they're two things that a lot of people aren't interested in. A lot of people gain from war, from imperialism. There are a lot of people not talking about Venezuela because they know there's oil. They're going to gain from that. You know, and then there's the nuclear thing with trying to provoke continually Russia and China. You know, what's going to get us first? A nuclear accident, or a nuclear war, or climate change? I'd say probably climate change, but... So, we have to, even though it's probably too late, we have to go vegan, because every day that we're vegan, there's a whole lot of animals that will benefit from that, meaning that they won't be, our participation in climate crisis and eutrophication and acidification of the oceans and all of that, the hunger crisis that's in the world in various countries and all of that, the droughts and all of that, we are taking away our participation in that, and we're taking away our participation in the torture and killing of non-human sentient animals, whose only crime, in quotes, was that they were born onto this planet with us, and they're another species. So, please go vegan. I mean, I'm sure if you're probably following this channel, you already have some awareness of these issues. And it's probably a bit of a nightmare for you. And I find if I tune into other people who talk about this, in some ways it helps me, helps my sanity a bit to know that there are people who care. It helps, because sometimes it feels like crazy town, like people are just going on their merry way, just having fun and parties and consuming, and meanwhile we're on the edge of, the bus is 3/4 away over the cliff. You know what I mean? It's hard. It's really, you know, it can do your head in. These two things going on at the same time. imminent extinction, and this sort of consuming and carrying on as if, I mean, online is, you could spend your days just watching all the ridiculousness online. And a lot of people seem to be oblivious, or they're just trying to distract themselves because they know it's coming. I think there are more people realizing we're in dire straits, but there's a lot of people distracting themselves. It's very sad. It's very sad. It's hard to put it into words how I feel about that, seeing people distracting themselves like that. That here we are, and all people can manage to do is distract themselves with this and that, and you know, and there's so much that is wrong. Sometimes I sort of think, is there any point in even talking about this? You know, on this channel, is there even any point in having a channel? Because it just seems like so monumentally a clusterfuck. It's just so monumental at this point. I sort of think maybe I should just go and play in the garden, you know, grow plants and, you know, enjoy the cats and just enjoy this beautiful country that I'm in, this beautiful rural area that I'm in, because you know, is it worth it? But I can't not talk about it, because there are animals every day being killed for trivial reasons, and also there are many people being killed in these imperialist wars, and so I can't, in all good conscience, I can't do it. But part of me just is so, I'm just so distraught by what's taking place and the acceleration of the insanity. You know, whether it's the climate crisis and just letting it go on unabated and it's exponentially going crazy, or these imperialist wars that are just getting more and more and more, and people don't talk about it. You know, it really can do your head in, seeing how little is being acknowledged. Anyway, this was more like a vent. I really was just going to do a short video about these poor 500,000 individuals who drowned, and it's terrible. But it's all just a snapshot of a bigger picture of the mess that we're in. But we can take control in our own lives and start speaking out. And if we, you know, even if it's the end, at least you've tried, right? You've tried to get people to go vegan, you've gone vegan yourself, and you've tried to speak out for those who are in these countries that the West is invading for their resources and for global domination, who are destroying their families, right? We can do something about that too. So let's try and do that, shall we? Let's go out with a bit of class. Let's try and, you know, invite non-violence into our lives and really try and do something. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. If you like the content, please hit the like button. Please subscribe, and you can leave a comment if you wish, if you can keep it civil, please. And please click the notifications bell, otherwise you don't receive any updates. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Till next time, bye for now.